Welcome to Small Talk, where each week we sit down to discuss the sermon-based small group questions at Wallula Christian Church.
Hello and welcome to Small Talk, Wallula's weekly podcast. My name is Zach Bolin, student pastor here at Wallula Christian Church, joined by Craig Archer, worship pastor, and Lance Kaufman, lead pastor. We're glad that you're with us today. We've been off for a week or two, so vacation's over. We're ready to get back into it. Vacation, all things Easter. So we are here to represent the Kansas City Chiefs. Lance and I are good to go. Craig?
Mine does say Kansas City.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Oh, it does. Look at that. That was a happy accident going on here. So, do you own any Chiefs? Anything?
One shirt.
One shirt? Okay. There you go. They've been winning a lot.
Yeah, when they started winning, I thought I should go get a shirt.
Yeah. There goes that bandwagon. Let me jump on it.
I'm not ashamed at all.
Yeah.
Fair weather fan.
Yeah. So, we are starting, now that Easter's over, we're starting a new series in one of my favorite books, the book of James. And so we're going to be looking at James chapter 1 today. And so just like always, we will start off with a fun question. And we'll see where this one goes, because it is very open-ended. But it said, if animals could talk, which one would you most want to have a conversation with, and why? So, take that away, Craig. What do you think?
I would just choose to be able to have a conversation with my cat, because, not because I really would want to. I don't think it would have much to tell me.
Okay.
But 2 months ago or so, we thought our cat was going to die. Took it into the vet, and the vet said it's in a state of extreme kidney disease. And I was like, she was kind of talking in circles, and I was like, just tell me. Like, are we talking like weeks, months here? When is this?
Right.
Yeah.
He said, how much do you have?
Yeah. And
we'll say how long.
And she was like, this is pretty doom and gloom. And I was like, okay. So I took the cat home thinking like, we don't have much time here. And then she was like, I want to check in like 2 weeks or 3 weeks or something like that. Brought him back. And then she was like, I don't know how to explain this.
It's a miracle.
But the levels are better. And he's going to live longer than we expected. But the thing is, he's like gotten a little meaner. He won't eat the same type of food that he used to. And he's just more of a nuisance. And I just want to be able to talk to him and be like, what do you want? Help me help you a little bit.
Yeah.
I see.
I don't understand what's going on.
Yeah. Why are you so mean?
Yeah. Are you in pain? I don't know.
Right.
I don't know. So just my cat, just to make my life a little easier.
Yeah.
It'd be good to talk to him.
Did you tell the kids cat's about to die? And then, okay.
Yeah.
How'd they take that?
Ava and Haddon had no idea what I was trying to say. And then Elsie, she was sad for a little while. But then she had just decided that, well, if this cat dies, we're getting a dog. So she was convinced that a dog was on its way.
Trading it.
And she was so convinced.
She's like leaving the door open. Don't leave, cat.
I think I maybe told you this. Like at dinner, if she was praying, she would pray that our cat would die soon. So that it could be replaced by a dog.
She's so sweet. Little Elsie. Oh, that's funny. That's great.
Yeah, that's been my experience with my cat.
Imprecatory prayer, is that what they're called? When you're praying for the destruction of...
I don't know.
Something like that. Like types of prayer.
That's a big word.
Yeah, it is a big word.
I thought that's what
I don't know. I don't think I've heard that.
Yeah, when you're praying for like the destruction of your enemies, like David and stuff like that. Do that.
Yeah.
So, she's starting young.
I don't know what to make of any of that.
Yeah.
I don't know how to explain the turnaround that the cat made, given the prayers of an innocent, sweet little girl that the cat would die. I don't know.
Faith of a child.
Yeah, faith of a child. I don't know. I don't know how to preach that.
Yeah.
So,
That's great, though.
I'm not stealing that illustration. That's yours. Keep it in your
I'll
back
pocket
pocket.
that.
Yeah.
It's there's something there, but I'm just not sure
How
what
are we
it
gonna
is.
put this into a
Find
sermon?
it.
That's
We'll
awesome.
Find that application someday.
We're preaching. We're going to be doing Jonah pretty soon here, so I
There's
think you can
something
squeeze
there.
it in there
Something.
about. Yeah,
Yeah, I don't know.
that's pretty good. I think it's
That's
better when I
awesome.
have at least the stories. I don't have any good stories with mine. I didn't have any strong feelings for animals, and so it was more just logical, like what animal would be kind of cool to talk to. And so I've always heard that like dolphins are one of the smartest animals, and so I just thought that would be kind of cool, like just to see like how smart are you? You know, maybe put it in its place. Be like, I don't think you're that smart. I don't think I'd shame a dolphin, but trying to, just wanting to talk to dolphins, be like, you're not that smart.
It'd be a TV show. Are you smarter
Are
than
you
the dolphin?
but yeah, like dolphins and even like blue whales or something, like they have the largest brain for whatever. And so, and then their communication style, like they have this,
Right.
I'm not going to do it, but you've heard whales try to communicate. And
No, what does that
stop
sound
it,
like?
Stop it. Nope, I'm not going to do it. But you know, like where there's obvious communication going on, to be like, oh, that'd be kind of cool. I feel like with most animals, maybe because I'm thinking of it too logically, it's just going to be like food.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
That's what- yeah.
It's not deep thoughts going on here. Like, oh, we've really tapped into something
Right.
that.
I asked Haley this question over lunch, and it's like, yeah, they just food and I don't know.
I
like,
want to
what-
go play.
They're
If
not
it's a dog.
contemplating existence.
Yeah.
and-
You
Pet
don't
me.
think so?
Yeah, no. What
don't
does it
know.
mean to be a cat? Yeah, I don't think they're thinking like that. So I think it'd be pretty straightforward. But the ones that show, like, you know, with dolphins are more fun and playful, so maybe there's something there. And
Maybe.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
I don't know. A few years ago, you guys have experienced this at some point, probably, but a few years ago, we had a bird that, I don't want to say that lived in our yard, but it stayed around the house for several weeks or whatever, and would fly into the window,
Oh.
repeatedly.
I had a friend that this happened to. Yeah.
Just over and over, every day. Just fly into the window over and thud, and see its reflection and thud. And I'm sure that bird's dead because it was stupid. But I think I would want to ask it, what's wrong with you?
What's wrong with you?
Why do you keep doing this?
Yeah.
Lance and I are going to shame these animals.
What's up with that decision making? You
Yeah.
know, what do you see in there?
Yeah.
You think, are you that attractive to yourself
We
that
haven't-
how
Yeah.
how
That's
stuck
what I
up
wonder with
are
my
you?
friend. It's like, is it the reflection?
I
that
think
it's- Or is there
so,
something it can
but-
see inside that's like, I want that thing?
Wait, what are you talking about?
It's
Your
flying in-
birds.
my friend had a bird that's flying
Oh,
into his like glass.
Oh,
his
you said
sliding
my
door.
friend. I thought it
Yeah.
meant like your
My
friend.
friend
is-
wasn't doing that.
I know. I was like, what's your
Hitting
friend
his head
doing?
on the window every
Yeah.
3 minutes. Yeah,
What's wrong with you?
yeah. I think they see their reflection. I think I've heard that, but
Oh.
I don't know for sure. Maybe.
And they can get, birds in my backyard, they get territorial
Yeah.
and they like duke it out. And so maybe it's trying to.
Maybe.
So they think they're trying to do. I always thought it was just because they thought it was not there because it's glass, and so they were trying to just come into the house. But if it's that and they're actually
Maybe.
going at it, it's funny to think like some
Yeah.
birds like, dude, don't mess with that bird over there.
Knocks
It's
me
like,
out
it's
every
like hitting
time.
a brick wall.
Yeah, we tried all kinds of things. I mean, Sherry hung up these. She found online somewhere research that if you put these pattern stickers, on the wall, then the bird won't. Yeah, no.
You kept doing it?
Oh yeah, that didn't
Whoa.
work. Blinds, all kinds of things. Trying to. So I'm not really sure, but I'd want to know what that bird thought, and but now that it's gone, I don't want to talk to it anymore. I'm okay with that. My son told me this story. He saw a meme online that PETA put out this picture of a package of meat, in cellophane. You can see the steak or whatever, and on the package of steak, it said, "My name is Chloe.
Okay.
or whatever.
The cow.
And yeah. And it was like, would you still eat this?
100%.
You're right. And I guess one of the responses or replies or whatever was, I would look for my name like on those Coke cans. You know, it's sort of. Yeah.
Hey, I got one of these back.
Right. Delicious. So that's a little weird.
Yeah,
But
it's a reverse advertising.
Yeah.
Well, the McCoys, Joni and Lance, they have a few animals. It's not like a huge farm, but they had a few. And so I forget how this happened, but Graham was probably 5, and they posted a picture of, hey, we got a new calf or whatever, and Graham was asking about it. And so I asked Joni, because she was helping out with the youth group at the time, and I said, hey, Graham had some questions about it. And she said, well, why don't you come and, she said, what's its name? What's the cow's name? And so anyway, that led to us being invited out there, and she said, we're going to name it Graham. And so it was Graham that, and it grew up for a couple of years, and then they sold that cow, and I told Graham, I mean, we made him know, we let him know, just so you know, this is the process that's going to be happening, and it didn't mess with him at all. He thought it was cool to see the cow, and then later on we're like, hey, that cow's not here anymore, and so he kind of laughs about it.
On your plate.
Yeah, that's right.
You might be enjoying.
Yeah. But yeah, he had a cow named after him.
Cool.
Yeah, he thought that was cool.
Yeah.
And then, so anyway, shout out to the McCoys.
Yeah.
They may name their cows after you. All right. Well, we will get started. We are looking at, like I said, the James chapter 1. We're jumping right into it. Trials and temptations, and it's a really interesting thing because a lot of Christians struggle with this of a loving God allowing bad things to happen, or why do bad things happen? And it's funny that where the Bible addresses it is not how you would think it would, especially in a situation like this. Instead of saying, let me explain it all, the reason why, and here's how to, all this stuff. Right. James starts off at the very beginning in verse 2 saying, consider it pure joy whenever you face trials of many kinds. And so he's not trying to defend it away or explain it or anything like that, make excuses. He's saying not only will they happen, but your attitude toward it should be, you should have joy during that. And so, let me just finish for those who are listening and maybe don't know James, but it says, consider pure joy whenever you face trials of many kinds, because you know that the testing of your faith produces perseverance, and then perseverance can finish its work in you so that you may be mature and complete, not lacking anything. So that's the very first part. But as we're looking at this idea of trials, this is question number 4. The question is, where do trials come from, and why should trials produce joy in our lives? And what is this idea of counting it all as joy, or considering it pure joy? What does that look like practically? So just that idea of trials in general, what should we be thinking of when is everything a trial? I can't find a good parking spot. Should that be like, I got to consider this joy? Or, do we need to also have a good point of reference for that?
And we were talking about it just a little bit before lunch. And when I was thinking about this, I think, there's, like you just said, it's like, is everything a trial? And how do we respond to some of these things? And I was thinking about how, kind of two ends of the spectrum, I guess. Some people might think, well, if I followed Jesus, my life should get easier, sort of thing. And then, I don't know, we kind of have this reaction of trying to avoid trials and kind of skirt around them in life. And then I look at, for instance, the audience that James would be writing to. And later on in the letter, he mentions people getting dragged into court for their beliefs. And I think about other people in the Bible that were following Jesus with all of their being. Someone like Paul. It's like, did he face trials? Absolutely. And so there's kind of, when we look at in Scripture, I'm like, well, yeah, trials, that's part of following Jesus. It's part of being a human. And I think those things, we know those things are allowed in our life for what James said. It helps shape us, inform us, causes us to look to God more than ourselves. Like we're about to study Jonah here in a little bit, and I've been on chapter 2 of Jonah when he's in the belly of the fish, and he gets to such a low point where he's just thinking, well, I'm going to die down here. So his only option is to turn to God. Mm-hmm. And that's, trials in our life, whatever, in varying degrees, that's the purpose of them. Like I was telling Zach today, I look at trials in my life, and sometimes it's like paying a lot for a expensive car repair. Mm-hmm. And that just like, I can get like really frustrated with that. Mm-hmm. And that's nowhere near the trials that we see in like scripture and stuff. But the way that it affects me, and I'm like upset about this. And then I turn to God and I think, well, what can I learn from this? Mm-hmm. It's like, okay, like finances, that's something I need to give myself over to God in, and he can help work on that in me, some of those things. But when we face those things, thinking about this list of, like Zach's translation says perseverance, ESV says steadfastness. Something that I read that I thought was really good with that word is when we face something that is a trial, not to have, as it said, a meek, passive reaction to what is happening, but instead, in our circumstances, have a strong, active, challenging response. So like, that's part of finding the joy in it, is leaning into it and thinking, what is God going to do in this situation? What is he going to teach me? And not just try to like step back and avoid it and think like, oh, like this is bad, so I'm not going to like this says. You should lean into it and think, well, what can I do with God by my side in this?
Yeah. Right. Yeah. And when I was thinking about, this is, where do they come from? And I think this is from your sermon, but there's a lot of different things, because we were talking about this. There's two sides to it where you know, there's going to be persecution they're talking about, and these things that we don't have to deal with. So sometimes it's like I'm going through something that's hard, but it's really nothing compared to what they went through, and that's true. But it still is something that I'm going through. So it's like, on one hand, not making it seem like every little bad thing is equal to what's in Scripture, but also not to diminish it, because people are struggling with things that are still a struggle. So one of the things you said in your sermon is like, where should we expect these, or where do they come from? And I just thought, us, others, and life. Sometimes our trials are just because of our own mistakes, our own sin, our own struggles, and then sometimes it is from others. Sometimes it is persecution. Sometimes, through no fault of your own, you're going to have something happen to you. And then also just life in general. We have a staff member who's about to go to a funeral, and that's a trial, if it's someone that you care about. And so life happens, and so there will be trials from that. But why should they produce joy? Well, and part of me is like, well, it says it right here, because it develops perseverance, and then that produces maturity, so that you can be mature and complete. Or finish its work in you, so that you may be mature and complete. But this idea of perseverance is kind of what I latched onto, because the Bible doesn't say, hey, as long as you follow Jesus, things are going to be good. We know that it's going to keep getting harder. And so I talk to the students about this all the time. Like, let's just take the Bible out of it. If you're in a sport, if you play football, you do practices and those aren't fun. Those are hard and challenging, and they test you, and you're, exhausted and all these things from it. But so that when it comes time to play, you are ready, because you've already been through hard things. You've already done hard things. And so also with mental things of like school or anything else. So same thing when it comes to spiritually, when we go through hard things, it can strengthen us for later on. Now, in the middle of hard things, we don't think, oh, this is sweet, I'm going to be so strong later on, but that is what it, so you don't have to be like happy about it like that. No one really likes to go through hard times, but knowing that it's not for nothing. An example I tell the kids is like the students is that, if you're talking to a high schooler who they're dating someone and they're broken up for the first time, like if you talk to a student who's really thought that maybe this was the one at 14 years old, and then they break up, they're going to say that's a level 10 pain. Like that's the worst thing I've ever gone through. But if you tell that to any adults, And if the student's saying, this is the worst thing that's ever happened to me, and any adult would just kind of struggle to be like, yeah, I know you feel that way, but trust me, that's not going to be the worst thing, because we've been through harder things. We've been strengthened through it. So every time we go through something, it kind of can strengthen us and then help us to persevere. And really, that's what Paul's talking about when we look at, like, in just the book before, in Hebrews chapter 12. He says, therefore, since we're surrounded by such a great cloud of witnesses, let us throw off everything that hinders us and the sin that so easily entangles, and let us run with perseverance the race marked out for us. And so the Christian life, the success of a Christian life, is going to be based on perseverance. Can you persevere? And so these little trials, although not pleasant, when we still trust in God and he leads us through them, it continues to strengthen us and help us to grow from it and to persevere. I think that's it.
Yeah, I just think it's interesting, this conversation about joy. I mean, we mentioned on Sunday a little bit that it's not pasting a smile on your face. It's not necessarily that you never, when you're going through a difficult time, maybe it's a health issue or a financial crisis or relationship that's struggling. It's not, I don't think the point is, you never feel down, that you don't realize there are real consequences to this situation that we're going to have to figure out. It's just that big picture view that we're supposed to have, that God is doing something through it, that there is, we get to the end of this section of Scripture we studied, and James talks about when you stick through it, when you are steadfast, your reward is this crown of life. And we read crown and we think like royalty, we think king or queen, but that crown, that Greek word is talking about a wreath that they would award to an athlete who ran a race. And so we ought to think trophy more than crown, kind of in our mindset or culture or whatever. And to me, that tells me a couple things about trials. One, it tells me that God wants to do something in that, in us. He wants to change us. He wants us to persevere, to be steadfast, to remain focused on him throughout it, and that there's a reward at the end. And by the way, that there's an end. That no matter how you look at it, right? This isn't forever. From a believer standpoint, even a diagnosis of terminal cancer or whatever isn't forever. We are going to be made new, and we're going to receive that crown of life. And so I think when I think of the joy that James is talking about, it's just that perspective that, this isn't forever. That my eternity is way longer than this. And probably most of the time when we're talking about trials, it's not even forever this side of eternity. Right. There's an end to that financial crisis. There's an end to that struggle. And so whatever it is. And so that's mostly true. But secondly, that God is growing us and maturing us, and there's a reward out there. And so we can be focused on that crown of life.
Yeah. Yeah, well, so to go more from an academic, like, where do trials come from, and what does it look like to produce joy? Question number 10, which is what we're going to next, is more of a personal one, and it says, James teaches us that the testing of our faith develops perseverance or steadfastness. And so personally, so share about a time in your life when you went through a difficult situation. You may not have to, you don't necessarily have to share the story, but share how you grew in your faith through that time. So how have you seen this work in your own life where you've grown through a difficult circumstance?
This was back before, well, before I was working at Wallula, when we lived in Eudora, we moved to Eudora because Haley got a teaching job in Olathe, and then later she taught at Eudora Middle School, and I was working part-time at the campus ministry at KU, and transitioning from teaching, feeling this call into ministry. And there was a period of time where, the goal was I would be working and Haley, we'd start having kids and she'd stay home. And for a long time, there wasn't any opportunities placed before us and doors opening. And so it was really, it tested me and Haley, and relying on God to, in His timing. We really felt strongly that ministry was where we were supposed to be. And I remember one day at that point I was working at Campus Christians. I had kind of these other part-time jobs that I was doing, like teaching drum lessons and stuff. And I was driving, and a song came on, and it's like one of those moments where it's like, because those things are on your mind and you're going through this, the words kind of hit you in a different way of a song. And it just reminded me that God is faithful. I've seen Him work before in my life and other people's lives in Scripture. And so there was moments where I was reminded that, okay, I need to turn to God, try not to just put this all on my shoulders and try to figure this out and white knuckle through this situation. God did end up opening doors, and I'm here at Wallula, and so that was a season where it was a lot of testing of patience, relying on God, because it was like we didn't know really what was next, but we were ready, and so it was just kind of that season of waiting.
Yeah.
I was trying to think, there's like a lot of little things I could think of, but the biggest one was for the past couple of years. And, you'd mentioned like the uncertainty of, what's next. And so for me, I remember there's some times when it's like, I don't know what's going to happen next. And even if I was going to be at Wallula, like if I thought I should be here. And so at that point when it was like, man, I don't know day to day what's going on. And so then what am I left with? And it's like when everything was stripped away, which is like the place you'd never want to be. It's like, man, I felt like I was closer to God in that, because it's like, what else do I have? And so I remember like some of the things that I learned from it, or like how my faith grew during that time, was not only like I always felt like I've trusted in God, but then but you always have money and whatever, the stability, and so you're like, yeah, I trust in Him, like, but it's always up here. So realizing, like my trust in God grew deeper, but then also experiencing the community of the church, pouring into me was a huge thing, and watching that happen in real time, like in my own life and for my family, and then going back to that whole, a high schooler going through a breakup, my level 10 pain has now shifted, it's grown, of what I can persevere through. And so I'm even more content in following God, even when things are hard, and knowing that I can, even if it's uncertain. Not that I want to go through something that's hard again, but when it happens, I'm even more like, I know what I can do and have done, and what God can do through all that. I also thought like, when I think about people later on in life, empty nesters and whatnot, and we always say things like, man, they're stereotypically, they usually have a lot of wisdom, right? Because of the things they've gone through and just the life experience. And so just seeing that play out in a practical way for people ahead of me, and whether they made mistakes and then learned from that, or whether they did it right, both of them impart wisdom in their own trials or the trials that they've gone through. And so I just see that, life is a way of showing you, of refining you, and you can either lean into it and say, like you said multiple times, what is God teaching me in this, and how can I grow in Him, or not? But man, the number of times I've taught on and have heard taught on, God reveals himself a lot more in times of pain and struggle than he does when things are great. And you're like, I totally know that. And then it's still not fun, but man, it's so true. It's so true that you learn more about yourself and the nature of God and your relationship with him and who Jesus is during those times, if you're open to it. So yeah, it was, I feel closer to God than I ever have before because of those times that have gone before me. So yeah.
I just think it's been so important to be a part of the church, the family of God in those circumstances. I mean, I think there are a couple of seasons in my life that stand out, and trials of various kinds, right? And some you don't see coming, and some are, I remember somebody talking to me in my office and saying, "Hey, why are you doing this?" Right? Just think this through with me a little bit. And it wasn't like a serious, but just why are you acting like this? Right? What's going on? And so all I'm saying is not every kind of we think of those times when people have supported us, and it's not always the fun conversation that is a means of support and kind of redirection or whatever that can help us in those difficult times. And especially if the trial is kind of grown out of our own. That's the message for next week, literally. That temptation gives way to sin, and sin gives way to death. And so we can sometimes find ourselves in the midst of a trial from our own choices. Not always sin, just choices or whatever. And maybe we need to handle that differently. And somebody comes alongside and says, let's think about the way you're acting or how you're choosing to handle this situation. And so and other times when people have said, this doesn't change who you are. You're not you're the same child of God. You're the same person that God created, and he still loves you even in the middle of this trial or whatever. And so those kinds of, I just think being in those relationships, that's when it really matters. And so you need to seek those relationships,
right?
Yeah. And but
yeah, I think so. And one last thought I was going to say, which ties into that, is that you can have two people going through the exact same trial with equal difficulty and everything else, and have two totally different outcomes. And one is drawing closer to God through it, and one is leaving the church or disbelieving in God. And so it's so important, like you said, like the other things going on, the support system you have, the community you have, to help guide you through that. Because it is, when you go through trials, it's hard, and you need the word, and you need other people speaking wisdom who've been before, ahead of you, who've said, I've been through this too, and having that and realizing it's going to be okay, but you got to keep going to develop perseverance. But yeah, really good stuff. Love James, and look forward to, diving deeper into the rest of this book. But yeah, I think that's it for now. Trying to think of any, I'm so used to Easter coming up and be like, don't forget Easter's coming up, but I don't think we have anything on the horizon. Mother's Day, don't forget.
Don't forget Mother's Day.
You guys got about 10 days to get a good gift. So, all right. Well, we'll see you guys next week, and thank you for joining us.